Square Enix is releasing yet another version of the classic Final Fantasy games, called the Pixel Remaster series. The first couple just came out, so let's go back to where this whole series started and take a look at this most recent remake of Final Fantasy I. So, a little bit of context. I'm a pretty big fan of the Final Fantasy series, at least up until 12 or so, and I've been playing Final Fantasy I for a long time. I've completed at least one playthrough of every English language version of the game that's been published, and in fact, I've still got my original 8-bit NES version. And a couple others. So the changes in the Pixel Master version stood out to me immediately. I want to start off by saying that this is a weird version of Final Fantasy I. There are graphical changes, audio changes, and some gameplay mechanic changes. One of the very first things I noticed was diagonal movement, and this is a huge change. As far as I can remember, this is the only version of Final Fantasy I to feature it. A lot of the streamlined quality of life improvements from recent ports are included, like you can buy more than one item at a time in shops, the menu's cleaned up quite a bit, you can use quick saves, and so on and so on. The graphics and sound are different. The music is a selection of some pretty high-quality orchestra renditions of the original classic tunes, and they even included slightly different arrangements of tunes that were recycled in earlier ports, so that each map you go into that would have reused the same song has a slightly different arrangement of it. Some of the music tracks came out great, but frankly, a couple of them are kinda crappy and awkward. But musical preferences boil down to personal taste, so you might love them all. The map graphics look to be recycled from the PSP remake, with only some very minor changes as far as I can tell, and that's not a bad thing because it's beautiful. The biggest graphical change is the character and monster sprites. You may have already noticed that the map and battle sprites of the four players are significantly different from previous versions of the game. I think opinions on these sprites are going to be pretty mixed. They kind of look like a weird hybrid between the original Final Fantasy I sprites and the strange ones that kind of came out of the mobile phone remakes. They've added in a few frames of animation that weren't present in earlier versions, which isn't bad, but overall, I feel like the new sprites detract from the experience a bit. I really liked the remade sprites in the GBA and PSP remakes, but these, I don't know, it's hard to explain. They just look out of place. I haven't played the other Pixel Remaster ports yet, and I'll admit I'm very worried about how 4, 5, and 6 are going to look once they're released. Another big change is the in-game minimap and the world map view. You can bring up a full-screen map in dungeons that even shows you where the floor exits are. I get that this is a feature that most modern 2D RPGs have, but it's a huge addition to Final Fantasy I, and to be honest, it's almost game-breaking, since maze floors and dungeons don't really present any exploration challenge anymore. The map addition isn't all bad, though. On the overworld map, you can bring up a larger map that shows you the places you've discovered, and even how many treasure chests and key items are left. I actually like that, as it makes it easier for completionist playthroughs to quickly check if anything was missed, but I don't know, it kind of feels like the additional map views are something that maybe would have been more appropriate for a New Game Plus. I don't know, opinions are going to be mixed on that. Another pretty significant addition is the ability to forget spells. One of the original challenge mechanics for Final Fantasy I has always been that there are 4 spells in each color for each level, but you can only learn 3 of them at a time on an individual character. This forced you to pick and choose what spells to learn on your mages to the exclusion of others, and the choices were permanent. Well, not anymore. Now you have the option to forget a spell, open up a slot, and learn a different spell to take its place. There's a catch, though. You don't get a refund on the gold you spent learning the spell that you forgot, so there's a cost associated with using this feature. I think this is actually a pretty strong addition, especially for parties with red mages in them once you hit class change. More purist reviews are going to slam this, but I really don't mind its addition. It's kind of a quality of life improvement. I did notice one change that I definitely did not like. There are a few additional monster groups present in this remake that weren't there in the original game. For example, this battle with 6 ogres was not present in earlier versions. It's not a huge game-breaking issue or anything, but if you've played the game, it's a change you're going to notice, and it's a change that I personally did not like. Another thing, the difficulty level. The Pixelmaster remake has the difficulty tuned way down. I spent basically 0 time on intentional grinding, and I was able to stay pretty far ahead of the leveling curve just by not running from any fights. In the early game, this is kind of an issue, since the gold rewards haven't been ramped up to the same scale as the experience rewards, and you're going to be pretty broke until you hit the Earth Cave. For some context, I was level 8 by the time I got into the Marsh Cave, and I did 0 grinding to get there. Usually I'd hit the Marsh Cave around 6 or 7, and it would take some grinding on ocean mobs to hit those levels. Once you hit the second half of the game, though, gold is really no longer an issue, and you'll find yourself plowing through combat pretty easily. However, as far as I've noticed, all the same mobs that have instant death attacks and stun status attacks in the original versions still have them here, so your treasure haul can get cut short if you get bad luck on a pack of Medusas or something. At its core, the Pixelmaster remake is still Final Fantasy I. If you enjoyed the original game, you'll probably like this one too, and if you haven't played it in like a decade or so, this isn't a bad port to put a few hours into. You'll get some pretty good nostalgia off of it, and it's still fun. A lot of the classic moments are preserved and upgraded with little cutscenes. The secret tile game on the boat is still there. And the most annoying NPC in the entire Final Fantasy series still gets in the way. I'm talking about this guy, right here. Yeah, he's still there. And he still gets in the way like a champ. Dude just doesn't move. And it's just like it used to be. Yep. I'm just going to let you suffer with me for a moment. Nowhere else to go. It's fine. If you ever wondered why speedruns don't go into this part of the town, well, this guy's why. Anyway, my final thoughts on the Pixel Remaster version of Final Fantasy I are generally positive. I mentioned a couple of gripes, but it's still a decent remake. The secret endgame dungeons from the PSP remake are absent, which is a letdown, but if you don't know what I'm talking about, you won't notice anything missing. One thing I definitely want to mention, if you're new to the Final Fantasy series or are introducing someone to it, this is a really good place to start. This remake removes most of the tedium and, the grindy elements, while still preserving the core experience. And the changes that veteran players might flinch a little at won't be noticed at all by fresh players. If you love Final Fantasy, you'll still recognize most of what you like. And if you're new to the series, you'll probably get hooked. Well, that's about it for the Final Fantasy I Pixel Remaster. As always, thanks for watching.